This is the how-to class for achieving your secure retirement. Now, it's been a challenging year with the pandemic, presidential elections, the ups and downs in the market, and that can foster a lot of concern, a lot of worry, a lot of emotion, maybe a lot of fear. And the newspaper headlines don't help, right? Dow crashes 800 points, 2-day losses, 1,800 points. And then the financial talking heads are telling you what you should be doing. It's no wonder that we can sometimes make poor financial decisions. But it's important to remember that emotions can be hazardous to your wealth. If you're making decisions based on fear, concern, worry, that can lead to potentially poor financial decisions. But making good decisions with our money takes effort. It takes work. And as Thomas Edison reminds us, opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. We hope throughout the webinar to help you to do some of this work, put forth some of this effort. And the fact that you're spending the time in this webinar tells me that you are serious about making good decisions with your money. Now, our objectives for the webinar are to help you understand some key considerations as you prepare to retire, to provide you with a framework on how to make good financial decisions. We also want to highlight some of the major risks and opportunities to your retirement, and then give you some simple tools you can use at home to implement your own plan. Now, let me share with you the key takeaway from the webinar. How to retire? Have a roadmap. Now, you wouldn't build a house without blueprints. You wouldn't take a cross-country driving trip without a map or a GPS. But unfortunately, all too many people enter into retirement without a roadmap, without a game plan of how to navigate through the twists and turns that always come with life and living in retirement. Our roadmap process provides you with the important information about what's important about money to you and your spouse, to identify goals that require money and planning, and then help benchmark your current financial reality. So it really helps you get on the same page and know what point A is, where you are today, and where you want to go, and how to get there safely and without running out of money. Now, the tool that we use to help develop our financial roadmaps is the graphic that you see on your screen. And you can download a PDF copy of that on the right-hand side of the screen. Additionally, what we use a large 24 by 22 inch worksheet that walks through all the key areas to help you make good financial decisions and really help put things in perspective for you. If you'd like a hard copy of this large worksheet, just fill out your name and mailing address and we'll get a copy right out to you. It really is a very beneficial tool to help you make good financial decisions and really helps couples and families get on the same page financially. Now, throughout the webinar, we promise there's no sales pitch. This is pure education for you. Far too many people are making far too many mistakes as they prepare and enter into retirement. If we can help just a few people make better financial decisions to live the secure retirement they deserve, that's very rewarding for us. Additionally, we're trying to minimize the financial jargon so that it makes more sense. And then we don't want to waste your time. We're going to do all this in under 45 minutes. And we want to give you some smart ideas to implement your own plan. Now, who am I and why am I qualified to share this information with you? Well, I have an undergraduate degree in economics and a master's degree in business administration with an emphasis in finance. And I started my career on Wall Street, working for Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank, doing large financial transactions, initial public offerings, mergers, and acquisitions. And what I found is I got a lot of calls from family and friends saying, hey, you're on the inside. What should I be doing now with my money? You're on Wall Street. Tell me what to do. And what I found is the advice that people on Main Street are getting is not nearly the institutional quality advice that people on Wall Street are getting. And so my objective is to bring you that institutional quality advice so that you can make good financial decisions so that you can live life on purpose. So here's our agenda. We want to talk about the new retirement landscape. We're going to talk about portfolios to help you maintain your lifestyle in retirement. And then withdrawal strategies, very important to turn that nest egg into income. And then the bucket strategy, which will help you optimize return while lowering risk. And then how to avoid costly IRA mistakes. And then lastly, understand asset location versus asset allocation. It's a full agenda, so let's get started. The new retirement landscape, it's changing. It used to be you'd work for a company for 30 years, you'd get the gold watch, and they'd have a pension for you. And you'd use Social Security to meet your retirement needs in addition to the pension, and then you'd fill in the gaps with your nest egg. Well, that has been turned upside down. Now, very few people have pensions. We still rely on Social Security, but the vast majority of what people are living on in retirement is what they've been able to save and invest over their lifetime. And what this means is the responsibility of making good financial decisions and making sure you have the secure retirement you want and deserve is on you. No longer can we rely on our companies to manage our pensions and make sure we have enough money in retirement. The responsibility now is on the employee to save and invest and make good financial decisions. Additionally, what we see is our federal government is spending like there's no tomorrow, $23 trillion. And that bill is going to come due. And there's three ways in which we can solve it or pay for that bill. The first thing we can do is print money, and we're kind of doing that. And that's going to increase inflation. We can reduce benefits, but that won't make anybody happy. Or we can increase taxes. And that's the most likely scenario. So be prepared that as you enter into retirement in the future, taxes more than likely will be higher. Additionally, we're living longer. And longevity is what we call a risk multiplier. So right now, life expectancy for a 65-year-old is that 65-year-old man is that he'll live to 83. And for a 65-year-old woman, that she'll live to 85. But that's the median life expectancy. That means that a good portion of the population is going to live past that age. And the challenge is longevity is this risk multiplier, which means that as the longer you live, you still are subject to inflation risk, market risk, economic risk. All of these risks get multiplied the longer you live. So as you prepare for retirement, you need to prepare to live longer than you probably expect. And so this new retirement landscape puts the responsibility on you, means that taxes are probably going to be higher and you're probably going to live longer than you expect. And we need to plan for these key elements in retirement. So first, we want to talk about how can you maintain your lifestyle in retirement by structuring your portfolio to get you the returns that you need. Each year, a lot of the major financial services companies come out with their projections as to what they think the markets or the investments are going to return. And you can see here that you've got Morningstar and Vanguard and BlackRock and their projections for what stocks and bonds are going to return over the next decade. And if you have a 60-40 portfolio, meaning 60% stocks, 40% bonds, that means you're going to have an average annualized return of 2.7%. Now, I don't know any retirement plans that have been developed that plan for a 2.7% return in their portfolios and have everything work out okay. So what are you to do? Projecting lower returns, but you still need to live in retirement. You need your money to produce the income and growth so you can stay in retirement. So what are you to do? Well, the challenge for a lot of people is they think that the investment universe is stocks and bonds, the traditional investments. And if you can open your eyes to more what's out there, the entire investment universe includes some alternative or non-traditional investment classes, things like real estate, private equity, hedge funds, commodities, and I would even add digital currencies. And as you can open up the entire universe of investment strategies to you, now there's ways you can structure a portfolio to get the increased returns with no additional risk. And if all you're doing is trying to structure a portfolio with, traditional stocks and bonds, it's kind of like trying to build a house with a hammer. If you can open up the entire universe of investment strategies to you, now it's like trying to build a house or a retirement plan with an entire toolbox of tools to help you achieve your desired goals. And one of the key things about adding alternative or non-traditional asset classes to your portfolio is that the research shows that as you add these non-traditional strategies to your portfolio, it increases the potential return without increasing the risk. And that's ultimately what we want in your portfolio, to be able to maintain your lifestyle in retirement. We need that portfolio working as hard as possible for you without taking the added risk that maybe your losses will be more than you can handle. to try and look at more asset classes than just traditional stocks and bonds. Now, we talked about this big nest egg that most people are living off of. And what's the most important about this nest egg is not so much how big it is, but how much income can it produce for you in retirement? How do we turn this large nest egg, which you've saved and invested for the last, throughout your life in retirement, in your working years, how do we turn that now into income? And one of the key ways that we can make sure we get the maximum income is how do we withdraw this money out of the key different tax advantaged buckets that we have these funds in. And so as we look at the kind of the unsophisticated approach of withdrawal strategies is, hey, I'm going to use my tax-free money first because I don't want to pay any taxes. Then I'll use my IRAs and 401ks to make sure that, I'm utilizing those funds, and those will all be taxed at ordinary income. And then lastly, I'll use my taxable accounts, and that'll be taxed most likely at capital gains tax rates, about 15%. The conventional wisdom has told us that, hey, maybe you should start with your non-qualified funds, your taxable funds, pay the 15% in long-term capital gains, then use your tax-deferred or your IRAs or 401ks, and then use your tax-free money. By using this conventional wisdom, that same bucket of money will last 3 additional years if you can just be a little more strategic about how you pull the money out of these 3 types of accounts. But we want more than that for you. We need to be able to adjust for this longevity that you're living longer than you expect. So if we can get more than 3 years, that would really help. And so what we recommend is that you take a more sophisticated approach by using bracket management, where each year you take a look at how much income do I need? What are the current tax brackets that I could be in? And how do I manage that bracket to keep myself and my income in the lowest tax bracket? And that looks at each one of these categories, the non-qualified funds, your tax-deferred funds, your tax-free funds, and how can I pull money out of each one of these accounts to get the lowest tax impact? And if you can do that, the research has shown that will add 6 more years of income to you. Same amount of money, just being strategic and sophisticated about how you pull that money out. And we utilize a software package each year when we sit down with clients to run through how much do they have in each of these types of accounts. What do we think their projected tax return or tax rate's going to be? And how can we keep them in this tax bracket that's going to keep them in the lowest possible bracket so they pay the least amount of taxes? So being sophisticated and strategic and utilizing bracket management for withdrawals will extend the same amount of income 6 years. That's a huge benefit. So you need to be more strategic about how you withdraw money rather than being just sequential about where you pull the money out. Really valuable and really can extend that money much longer for you in retirement. So now the bucket investment strategy. We want to optimize return while lowering risk. A lot of people, when they think about their portfolios, they think about it as one lump sum. What we want to help you do is start to think about your portfolio in multiple buckets. And time segment those buckets so that you are able to manage the risk and achieve your goals. So the way you can split these buckets, and you can look at, bucket number 1 is going to be your conservative and capital preservation bucket. That's going to be somewhere between 1 and 3 years of your income needs in retirement. And then your second bucket is going to be kind of this intermediate term time frame, maybe 4 to 10 or 4 to 7 years. And that's going to be a little more growth oriented. And then your third bucket is your long-term bucket. That can be anywhere from 10 to 15 plus years. And that's where we're going to have the most growth oriented portion of our portfolio. And by blending these 3 buckets together, we can now have less risk, but also make sure that our portfolio is growing so that we can keep up with inflation and with the income needs that you might have in retirement. Here's another way of explaining this. You can see on the far right-hand side is your long-term bucket, right? Anything 10 to 15 plus years. And you can see how it's allocated, right? The vast majority of that is stocks or equities. And then you've got some bonds, and then you've got your alternatives, right? These non-traditional asset classes. And then you go to your intermediate term needs, and you can see how the bond exposure increases, your stock or equity exposure decreases a little bit, and you still have your alternatives. And then as you go to your near-term bucket, you can see that is all capital preservation strategies, cash equivalents, those types of strategies that aren't going to fluctuate in with the markets, but it will be able to keep you up with inflation. And by structuring your portfolio in these kind of time segmented buckets, what you'll see is in that near term bucket where you've got 1 to 3 years of your retirement income needs, you don't need to be so concerned about the fluctuations of the market until that bucket becomes completely depleted. And rarely will that be that full 1 to 3 years. And as time moves on and you deplete money out of that near term bucket, you'll then move some money from your intermediate term bucket into the near term bucket. And then you'll replenish your intermediate term bucket with your long term bucket. And by doing this, it'll help you be more comfortable with maintaining a diversified portfolio in retirement, rather than just being overly conservative and not getting the rates of return that you need. So this bucket strategy is nice in theory, but it sometimes is very hard to implement. Like I said, making good financial decisions takes work and effort, but it's really worth it. And here's why. As you look at how the markets have performed over certain time segments, right? If we start on the far right-hand side with this 20-year rolling period, you can see that equities or stocks over any 20-year rolling period from 1950 to 2019 have returned anywhere on average each year, either 6% or 17%. Now, what's important about that is you see zero negative numbers on that side of the graphic. As you move toward the shorter time periods, now you start to see some negative numbers. So if we can time segment our goals and our income needs and our retirement portfolio, now we can take the time that we have and utilize that to our advantage to be a little more growth oriented for those longer term goals and be a little more conservative for those short term and medium term goals, and utilize the returns in the market to your advantage. Very important that you start to think about, how can I time segment my portfolio so I get the return that I need, but also manage the risk within the overall portfolio. Now, avoiding costly IRA mistakes. Americans have a lot of money in their IRAs. And this graphic just illustrates that there is trillions of dollars in IRAs. But as anyone who has an IRA knows, there are specific rules that you have to follow to make sure that you're in compliance with your IRA, whether that's, time requirements, income requirements, rollovers, RMDs, all of these requirements. And there's a lot of pitfalls or mistakes that people make with their IRAs. And so we want to highlight a couple of those so that you can make sure that you are in compliance and that the money's going to where you want it to go for your benefit, rather than to taxes and penalties and maybe to people that you don't want to have that money. So the first mistake we see a lot of problems with is beneficiary designations for IRAs or 401ks. It's important that on an annual basis you review who are the beneficiaries of your 401k or IRA. We've heard far too many stories of people that get divorced. They don't update their IRA beneficiary designations, and someone dies and the money goes to the ex-spouse, which was an unintended gift to that ex-spouse. So take the time to understand who the beneficiaries are of these qualified accounts. Now, all too often we also hear, well, I've taken care of that in my will. One thing you need to understand is that what you put in your IRA or 401k beneficiary designations is more important than what you've put in your will for those specific accounts. The IRA beneficiary designations are what are going to guide where that money is going to go, not necessarily your will. That's why it's so important that you update the IRA beneficiary designations. Additionally, make sure you put not only a primary beneficiary designation, but also contingent beneficiary designations. This helps make sure that if somehow the primary beneficiary predeceases you, and then you pass away, that the money will go to the contingent beneficiaries rather than ending up in something called probate. Important, IRA beneficiary designations. The other area where we see a lot of challenges and mistakes is on IRA rollovers. Now, this is moving money usually from your company 401k into your personal traditional IRA or Roth IRA. And there's two ways in which you conduct these rollovers. The first is an indirect rollover, and this is where you receive the money personally put it in your bank account, and then you've got to make sure that that money gets back into your IRA within 60 days. Now, you're only able to do one of those indirect rollovers every 365 days. So it's important that you be aware, if you're getting an indirect rollover, how many times you've done that in the last 365 days. The best way to do a rollover is what we call a direct transfer, from trust to trust or institution to institution. So this would be, let me transfer money from my Vanguard company 401k to my Schwab IRA, and the money goes directly. You don't ever touch the actual money. And in that case, there's no withholding. There's no 60-day requirement. There's no 365-day requirement. There's really no issues at that point. So you want to be careful about these rollovers and making sure you're doing them correctly. We also want to make sure that if you do a rollover, that you're separating any Roth or after-tax money you've got in your 401k into the Roth IRA or traditional IRA, making sure you're making that appropriate split as you do rollovers. So really important. It's a key element. We won't talk specifically about whether it makes sense to roll over or not, but once you've come to that conclusion, make sure you're following the rules. And if you can, make sure you're doing a direct transfer to avoid any penalties, issues, or taxes associated with the rollover. Another area where we see a lot of mistakes is on Roth IRAs. The first area where we see mistakes is that people may not understand that to be able to contribute directly to a Roth IRA, there are income requirements. Your modified adjusted gross income for a couple filing jointly tax returns, you need to be below $198,000 to be able to contribute directly to a Roth IRA. The other area where we see a lot of challenges with Roth IRAs are on Roth conversions. That's where you move money out of a pre-tax, tax-deferred account, maybe your 401k or traditional IRA, into a Roth IRA. And what you need to appreciate is that the tax associated with that conversion is paid in for the year that you do the conversion. And then there's no longer a do-over, what's called a recharacterization. Once you do a Roth conversion, it is done. It used to be that you could unwind that transaction within 12 months, but that no longer is available to you. No longer can you do a recharacterization. Once you do a Roth conversion, it's done. So make sure that it works for you, it's the right decision for you, and that you understand the amounts that you're doing to make sure that you're not increasing your tax liability beyond what you can handle. And as you think about Roth conversions, there are some benefits and considerations. The benefits are it can increase your tax-free savings. You really can get close to that zero tax bracket. It's a hedge against rising interest rates. There are some estate strategy benefits. Roth IRAs, when your heirs inherit their Roth IRA, yes, they will have to liquidate it within 10 years, but that liquidation will have no tax consequences because these are tax-free vehicles. Provides you with some tax diversification, and there's no required minimum distributions for Roth IRAs. But you need to consider, what's your time horizon? What's your current tax bracket? What are your tax rates going to be in the future? And how are you going to pay the conversion tax liability? We often recommend that you try and pay the tax liability with funds other than the funds that you're converting, because then you get more money into that tax-free vehicle. But how are you going to pay for it? So if you want to do this on your own, here's 3 simple steps. You move the money from your pre-tax, tax-deferred account, whether a 401k, IRA, 403b. You're going to pay the taxes in the year in which you do the conversion. And then that money is going to grow. Then you transfer that money into your Roth IRA, and it will continue to grow tax-free. And when you distribute the money out, like we've already talked about the withdrawal strategies, that money is going to be a tax-free withdrawal. And you can incorporate that into your withdrawal strategies to make sure that you're not bumping yourself into another tax bracket by withdrawing more money out of your accounts than you need. Now, the way to think about the achieving the 0% tax bracket is you're moving money to the right direction, meaning you're starting with taxable money. And then if you can contribute to a tax-deferred vehicle, that's your IRAs, 401ks, and then you move it into a tax-free vehicle. That's what the Roth conversion allows you to do. And so right now you need to start strategizing within your 401k contributions, your IRA options, what's going to make the most benefit for you as you think about future tax rates, current tax rates, and what income you might need in retirement. You really can strive to achieve this zero tax bracket so that when you're in retirement, you're paying less in taxes. Well, because Roth conversions are so valuable, I want to kind of walk through a few of the mathematics of Roth IRA conversions. So here's a simple scenario. Someone has $1 million in their traditional IRA, and they're currently in the 25% tax bracket. And their investments over a 10-year period are going to grow 70% in aggregate. Now, if they leave the money in their traditional IRA and tax rates stay the same at 25%, after 10 years, they go to take all the money out of their traditional IRA. They're going to pay 25% tax on $1.7 million or $425,000, which means they're going to be able to spend $1,275,000. Now, if they were to do a Roth conversion of that $1 million, pay the 25% tax, that would mean they'd have $750,000 growing in their Roth IRA. And we've seen that it's going to still grow at the same 70% in aggregate over 10 years, which means they'd have $1,275,000 to spend tax-free. What this is illustrating for you is that if tax rates stay the same, you're no better and no worse off if you do a Roth conversion or if you leave the money in your tax-deferred IRA. Now what happens if tax rates rise, which is what we think is going to happen because of the national debt and the bills that are coming due for our country. If now tax rates go up to 45% in 10 years, same scenario, you've got $1 million in your traditional IRA, you don't do a Roth conversion, so your account grows by the same 70% in aggregate over 10 years. So now you have $1.7 million. But if you withdraw all of that at that 45% tax rate, you now have $935,000 to spend. Now, if you'd done a Roth conversion, move that $1 million into a Roth IRA, pay the tax then, which was 25% or $250,000. You now have $750,000 in your tax-free Roth IRA. That account grows in aggregate 70% over the next 10 years. So now you have $1,275,000 now to spend tax-free versus the $935,000 you had in the traditional IRA. That's a difference of $340,000 by doing a Roth conversion. Now you can see the real benefit comes in because tax rates have gone up. Now, we would never recommend that you withdraw the full $1 million in any one year because then that would bump you up into the highest tax bracket and you'd be paying tax rates closer to 40% on your Roth conversion. So what we recommend is a bracket management. So for example, let's say that your adjusted gross income is going to be $100,000. And you're married filing jointly tax return. So if we look at that, that's going to put you squarely in the 22% tax bracket. But he also looked at the top end of that bracket is $172,750. And if you're at $100,000, that means you could do a Roth conversion of $72,750 and stay within the 22% tax bracket. And if you do that kind of strategy each year by staying within that lower tax bracket, now you're paying the tax today at a lower tax rate and generating more tax-free income for you in the future as tax rates potentially rise. So as you think about doing a Roth conversion, you want to understand how much should I do to stay within the lower tax bracket, whatever bracket I'm in. And even the 24% tax bracket's a great tax bracket, right? In same scenario, if you were at, let's call it a $200,000 of adjusted gross income, that would put you in the 24% tax bracket. But because that bracket goes all the way up to $329,850, now you can do an additional $129,000 of a Roth conversion and still stay within that 24% tax bracket. Still pretty low. And you do that strategically every single year. Now you could get more money into your tax-free bucket and really get close to that 0% tax bracket. Really powerful, but there's some very specific rules about doing Roth conversions and how to project the tax to make sure that you're not bumping up into the next tax bracket. So an analysis and working with your CPA or accountant would be really helpful in that strategy as well. Okay, finally, we're coming into the home stretch here. We want to help you understand the difference between asset location and asset allocation. Now, hopefully everybody understands what asset allocation is. And you probably can't see the specific names on each one of these colored boxes. But the idea here is each box is a different type of asset class, whether it's emerging market equity or large cap, small cap, real estate, high yield bonds. Each color represents a different asset class. And when you're structuring a portfolio, you want to have lots of colors. What that does is help blend the risk, but also give you a smoother return experience so you stick with your portfolio allocation. And what that does is gives you a very good rate of return without too much volatility, too much ups and downs. That's the benefit of asset allocation. It helps manage the risk, but still giving you a solid rate of return. Well, asset location is where are your different investments located, in what kinds of accounts. And so, for example, in your tax deferred accounts where you're not paying any taxes until you take the money out, that's where you want your taxable bonds. Your real estate investment trust which make lots of distributions to you, generate lots of income. Your CDs, high turnover stock funds, and maybe that fund trading account that you have where you like to move in and out, maybe kind of day trade a small portion of your portfolio. You want those in your tax deferred accounts because you're not paying any tax on what's being distributed or when you buy and sell different securities. In your taxable accounts, you want things that you're going to hold for long periods of time, right? The individual stocks that you'll ultimately pay long-term capital gains on, low turnover stock funds or broad stock index funds. These strategies don't generate a lot of income, a lot of taxable income, so it's okay to hold those in a taxable account. So where you locate your specific investments is very important so that you're not paying taxes unnecessarily when you don't need the income. As you're growing and preparing for retirement, you don't need the distributions from your bonds or your real estate investment trusts, right? You want those to continue to be working for you in a tax-deferred manner. So where you locate the assets is as important as the asset allocation that you might have within your portfolio. So what you want to do there is evaluate all the different accounts, and maybe the vast majority of your bond holdings are all in your 401k. And then all of your single stock holdings are in your taxable accounts, right? So you can start to look at some of the ways in which you can locate the assets that you hold so that you're not paying too much in taxes. So asset location is just as important as asset allocation. Whew. We covered a lot. And just to summarize or recap for you, what you want to remember is that the new retirement landscape puts the responsibility on you to make good financial decisions so you have the nest egg that you need to secure the retirement that you deserve. Also understand that taxes are probably going to go up and that you're going to live longer than you probably anticipate, and you want to plan for those things. And then understand that portfolios are more than just stocks and bonds. Look for some of these alternative asset classes. Now, we're not saying move 50% of your portfolio into Bitcoin, but we are saying maybe 10 to 20% of your portfolio should be allocated to some of these non-traditional asset classes so you can get the benefits of increased potential return without increased risk. And then create a bucket strategy where you time segment your investments with your goals so that you can get the benefit of the long-term performance in the markets, but not have your near-term needs subject to the fluctuations and up and downs of the market. And then your withdrawal strategies can extend your income by 6 years. Same bucket of money, 6 years of additional income by just being strategic and sophisticated about how you pull the money out of the different accounts that you have. And then avoid these costly IRA mistakes of IRA rollovers and beneficiary designations and Roth conversions. And then also be aware that asset location is just as important as asset allocation. Now, we've covered a lot. And this is the key question. Now what? What do you do with the information that you've just received? If you do nothing, then we've had a nice conversation. Hopefully it's been intellectually stimulating, but in the end, it has had no impact on your ability to retire and stay retired. You need to do something. You need to apply the principles that we've shared with you throughout the webinar. And so one of the key things that you can do is build your financial roadmap to retirement success. In developing your financial roadmap, that's what we're here for. We want to help you have this roadmap to navigate through the twists and turns of retirement and of life so that you can have the secure retirement that you desire and that you can stay retired. And again, if you'd like some help, we're more than happy to be helpful to you. We just ask a few things. We let you know that there's no cost or obligation. We are financial fiduciaries, which that means is that we have a legal obligation to do what's in your best interest. And we just want to help. And we want to help you by putting together your financial roadmap so that you can get on the same page with your spouse and make sure that you're moving in the right direction to achieve the retirement that you deserve. And all we ask is that you gather all the necessary documents so that you can be prepared. And we'll send you our important documents checklist so you can get those together. And then keep your appointment. And additionally, make sure that your spouse attends that appointment with you. It's important that you both get on the same page financially so that you can make good financial decisions. And if you schedule your financial roadmap, here's what you're going to get. We're going to give you clarity on what you value and your financial goals. We're going to benchmark your current financial reality so you know what you've got, how it works, and if it's going to help you achieve your financial goals. We'll look at Social Security and a Roth conversion analysis. We'll utilize our portfolio optimizer to identify the highest average return with the least amount of risk. And then we'll help you understand how much you need to have in your bucket strategy. And then with that roadmap that'll be completely filled out, it'll be yours. You can take that away and implement that all on your own. If you'd like us to help you implement it, we can have that conversation, but that's something that you would initiate throughout our financial roadmap process. And these financial roadmap consultations we will conduct here in our office in Reston, Virginia. And we're more than happy to host you here in our office. And we take all the necessary CDC precautions to make sure that is a safe and clean environment for everybody that comes in. Or we can do it through a Zoom call and share our screens and walk through that financial roadmap with you. Please, I encourage you to take advantage of the financial roadmap. One of the key responses we get from people after they go through the financial roadmap is, I wish we had done this sooner. There is no obligation. There is no cost. There's no hard sell. It really is for me about seeing what we can do to be helpful to you so that you can live your life on purpose. And I just want to take just a couple of seconds to let you know how much I appreciate you taking the time to be with us throughout this webinar. It really has been a good information to help you make good financial decisions with your money. I hope that you found it beneficial. I hope you'll take advantage of the opportunity to meet with us through our financial roadmap consultation so we can help you get on the same page so that you know that you can secure the retirement that you deserve. So thank you for joining us throughout the webinar. We look forward to hearing from you and schedule some time to be with you. And if we can ever do anything to be helpful to you, please reach out to us and let us know what we can do to help you make good financial decisions. Take care.